So we're going to do a little something different in this week's video and next week's video. I thought in honor of my wife and I's 27th anniversary on July 30th, I thought it might be fun before and after the anniversary to tackle 13 myths that we believe about marriage. I know when I jumped into marriage, there was a bunch of stuff I believed that was not accurate. And in working with a lot of couples, I know a lot of couples enter their marriages believing some things that are simply not true. And so this is going to both be fun to reflect on the dumb things that we actually believe, and probably helpful for some couples who are about to get married to go, oh, so that's not true. Maybe I need to rethink some things. So that's what we're going to tackle this week and next week on Relation Shots. Let's get to it. Hey, welcome to Relation Shots. My name's Eric Wooten. If this is your first time hanging out with us, welcome to the place to get practical relationship advice that actually works in your relationship. If you want a free guide to intimacy, you can find the link in the description area below. And if you're looking for a place to connect with other couples and be consistent and intentional in growing your relationship, consider our Altered Marriage membership, where you can find community resources and everything you're looking for. All right, so here's what we're going to do. This week, I'm going to tackle 7 myths that we believe about marriage. And then next week, I'm going to tackle another 6 so that I'm not giving you a 30-minute long video. So let's jump in. 7 myths that we believe about marriage that are simply not true. Myth number 1 is, I can change the other person once we get married. Now, here's the thing about that. There is some truth to the fact that when you're married, you should influence one another, right? There's things that I don't necessarily desire that my wife does, that I want to meet her where she's at, and so I may do some things that are not that important to me. There's things called compromise. But I think a lot of people think they can fundamentally change somebody's character, their habits, the things they desire, and so they're sitting there on the front end of marriage going, these are a little bit questionable, but I think once we get married, I'll be able to steer them a little bit, especially those of you that like to manipulate and control. Then you're like, for sure, I can make it painful enough that he won't want to do it anymore, or she won't want to do it anymore, and then we'll be set. So there will be a little influencing in marriage, but you are not fundamentally going to change the other person. Who they are while you're dating, just assume they're the same person when you're married. And things may even get worse in some areas. And hopefully, if they've got good community and are trying to grow themselves personally, you may get a better version of them down the road, but don't count on it. Some people are dating for potential, and that's a mistake you do not want to make. So that's one myth, is that we think we can change the other person once we get married. Myth number 2 is that marriage will fix some of our issues, right? Certainly, some of your issues that you have is because we're dating and we're not fully committed. And hey, if we can just live together full time and have the marriage commitment, these issues are going to go away. Probably not. I would assume that most of your current issues will continue to be issues in your marriage. It may correct some of them just because you have proximity and shared finance and some stuff, but guess what? It will unveil a whole new set of issues that you didn't have while you were dating. So while it may fix some, I bet it'll give you a lot more you didn't have. And the reality is it's not going to fix most of them. So that's simply a myth. Here's another myth. The myth is that when I get married, it will satisfy some of my personal issues. Right? These are the people that go, you know what, my loneliness issues, when we get married, that'll satisfy it because I'll get to be with the person all the time and it'll be fantastic. Or, you know what, the looking at pornography or some of my masturbation stuff, well, that's just because I'm sexually frustrated. But when I get married and we can be having sex whenever we want, that'll take care of every single one of those things. Here's what I've found, both personally and in working with thousands of couples, that your issues actually are not satisfied in marriage, but oftentimes magnified, right? So let's take loneliness. Well, my loneliness will be cured. Well, do you know what's really, really, really lonely? Being married to somebody and being in the same house with them all day, every day, but yet they are cold towards you and don't treat you well. That's a lonely place to be. You know, all those singles that say, well, I'm just sexually frustrated. You know what's really sexually frustrating? Laying in bed next to your spouse, who actually may be naked and is supposed to be the outlet for all of your sexual fulfillment, but they don't really want to have sex with you. That's sexually frustrating, much more so than laying in a bed by yourself wishing you were having sex with somebody. So if you believe the myth that many of your personal issues, whether it's around poor spending habits or greed or lust or loneliness or depression or anxiety, you name it, I would tend to say that probably your personal issues will be magnified, will not be satisfied once you're in close proximity in relationship with somebody else. So that's a myth. Myth number 4 is we marry our spouse, not their family. You ever heard someone say that? Well, I'm not marrying their family. Well, unless they are completely estranged from their family and never talk to their family and desire no relationship with their family, that's a false statement. You actually marry all kinds of stuff. And even if they are separated from their family, you're still marrying their family habits and the stuff they had upbringing and the trauma and the bad habits they learned in their family still resides within your spouse. So in essence, you are marrying some aspect of their family. But the reality is they are in relationship with their family, most people. And this relationship, oftentimes at the start of marriage, is stronger bond than what you have with your spouse because these relationships have been together for 15, 18, 20, 30 years. And so if you think that the family will not affect your relationship, I believe you're misguided. I think you set boundaries, and hopefully a family has healthy boundaries, but some families do not have healthy boundaries and will interfere and do whatever they want in your marriage. So you and your spouse will need to set boundaries in order to minimize or even eliminate the family's access, influence, and input into your relationship. But if you think that their family doesn't matter, I'm telling you, you're dead wrong. Their family matters a lot. Myth number 5 is there is the one out there for me to marry. I got to find the one. I got to find my soulmate. There is one person out there that God created specifically for me, and I got to find him. And when I do, it's like that's an inevitable win, because certainly if they're the one, then we really won't have issues and we'll never get divorced because they're the one. I do not believe there's a one. I believe that you should select one. That's a good habit. You should select one person around shared values, common interests. You like being with the person. You have a good friendship. There's some things to evaluate. But there's not this elusive one out there that you're going to just sit down and pray for and God's going to drop in your lap and you're going to run into him at just the right time in your life. The reality is we get to choose who we marry. We need to choose wisely. And every person that you do choose will come with a set of pros and a set of cons. And you have to be okay with not just the pros, but the cons and how you'll manage them. And so you select somebody, but you make them the one. So there's some of you that got married and you're like, oh man, I think I married the wrong person. I should have waited for the one. Well, guess what? Even if you married number 279, they're now number 1, and you figure out how to have a great and healthy relationship with that person. So I think it's a myth to believe that there is this elusive one soulmate for me. Myth number 6 is follow your heart. Haven't you ever heard somebody say that? You just got to follow your heart. Your heart will lead you into the right place. Well, if you're a person of faith, then you probably know Jeremiah 17:9 that says the heart's deceitful above all else, and no one can understand it, right? So that's not something you want to follow. Here's the reality. Usually when we talk about the heart, we're talking about our emotions and how we feel. And listen, our emotions are changing. Our emotions are tricky. Our emotions fool us. Our emotions are tied to our areas of fear, our areas of woundedness. And so we'll have emotions that may be irrational at times. You cannot follow your heart. Now, I'm not saying that you just ignore your heart, but I think your mind needs to be a part of the decision too. You need to be logical. You need to have discussions. You need to look for red flags. Even if your heart, quote, doesn't feel or see them, you need to look with your eyes, and you need to trust your eyes and your logic and your mind. And you need to have community involved. Because guess what? When you're, quote, in love, you're going to not see some things you should be seeing. You're going to be blinded to some things, right? They say love is blind. Well, it's blinding. I don't think it's completely blind, because once you get married, you're going to see some of that stuff and you're not going to be blind to it. So you have community, you have good people around you who may see things you don't see, and you trust the people around you if you have good people at times when your heart may be lying to you. So I would say do not just follow your heart unless your mind is in agreement and unless your community is in agreement as well. And myth number 7, the last one we'll tackle today, is that when it comes to marriage, happiness is the goal. Listen, I want to be happy. We just all need to be happy. God wants me to be happy. I've talked to everybody across the board, from people of faith, people not of faith, and everybody wants to be happy. Listen, Outside of the Western world, certainly until the last century or so here, marriage was not mostly about happiness. For a lot of people, it's about social status. For a lot of people, it's about family. For a lot of people, it's about survival. So marriage, arranged marriage has not always been about happiness. And here's the problem. Whatever the reason is that's driving you getting married, if that thing ceases to exist, then you will not want to be married anymore. That's the problem with marriage being about anything other than I'm committing to serve another person wholeheartedly, selflessly, and love unconditionally the way God's loved me. If there's any other motive, because that can't be taken away, right? I can keep stepping into that. If my goal was to serve, if the reason I got married was to serve and care and love and be committed to somebody, nobody can take that away. I can keep doing that. That's not something that could be taken from me. But if it's anything else, what if I got married for financial gain? And then my spouse loses their job and we have financial struggles. Now, the reason I got married is gone. I'm not going to want to be married anymore. What if I got married for companionship? And that's an aspect of marriage, but if that's the sole reason and we're not getting along or my spouse is ignoring me or they're too busy at work to spend time with me, now I don't have companionship, which is why I got married. So now I don't want to be married anymore. Maybe it was to have children and you run into fertility issues. That means you're not going to be married anymore. So no matter what it is, if it's anything other than I'm making a commitment to serve and love another person, then if it disappears in your relationship, you're going to want to get out. So myth is that happiness is the goal of marriage. Is it great to have a happy marriage? Yes. Should we strive for a happy marriage? Absolutely. I want to enjoy my relationship with my spouse. But that cannot be the goal, or I'm setting myself up for failure. So there's 7 myths we believe about marriage. Hopefully you still don't believe those. And if you do, you might want to reevaluate them. Some of you probably went, this would have been nice to know 5, 10, 20 years ago. Well, now you know, so you can tell somebody who's not married around you. So I'd love to hear your comments on some other myths that maybe you used to believe or know friends believe that are just not true based on your experience in real life. Drop a comment in the comment section below. Again, if you want a place to find community and work on your relationship, check out our Altered Marriage membership. And I'll see you next week right back here for the final 6 myths as we have the after anniversary celebration of my wife and I's 27th year anniversary. See you next time right back here on Relation Shots.